Live here once again when Audientes have published a report for the second quarter of 2022. And with me here on the broadcast, where you viewers can also ask questions during the lifetime of this broadcast, I have with me Steen Thygesen, its CEO. Welcome, Steen.
Thank you. Welcome.
We'll head straight into the report. And when the report was released, you could gladly announce that you have surpassed 1 million in Danish currency for revenues for the first half of this year. Most of these came from this quarter, 987,000. This is your first full quarter with sales. What are your initial impressions?
Well, of course, we are delighted that we are in the market and we are actually selling products to our dealers, who in turn are handing them over to end users in the Indian market. So, of course, we have been working towards that for a good few years. We started at the very end of first quarter with initial sales shipments. And of course, we ramped up quite substantially during the second quarter, but it is also our initial quarter, so we are delighted that we came to that point. It's a good round number to meet for the half year, and of course we think that we can do it even better in the coming quarters. So that's what of course our growth strategy is based around. We have activated around a third of our current number of dealers. So points of sale are actually working on marketing and selling our products. So we know there's a lot more kind of to come. And that's what we are working on now.
Talk to us a little bit about feedback. As said, this is your first full quarter with sales. What sort of feedback have you received from customers and partners, both in terms of software but also hardware?
Yeah, so maybe it's just if I could just show to the audience what we have developed a self-fitting hearing aid, which is essentially a hearable that you can wear around your neck, and then basically earbuds you put in. And once you put them in, you basically have a fully fledged hearing aid experience. We also have an app that supports it, running on iPhones and Android. And you can say, what do people really get when they buy this? Well, they get an instantly fitted hearing aid solution. So basically, a person with a hearing loss doesn't have to go through a very long cycle of trying, fitting, having it adjusted and so on. So this immediacy is what we have been trying to deliver a good experience around. And I think we have found a really good solution for that. That's what we're getting feedback on. We've been getting a lot of interesting feedback from the Indian market on basically the noise levels are quite high in India. So some have requested some kind of like programs that are more catering for kind of like the street noise and indoor scenarios and so on. So we have been getting feedback on that. We've been getting feedback on kind of like connectivity. You know, there's a whole host of phones in the market that we need to kind of support. So we have been, I think, learning a lot during that first kind of quarter sales. So in July, we have been addressing a number of these with some software updates. And we have also been launching a new feature for our professional channels where they can go in and actually program the device as well. Something that they had decide to do to achieve an even, you can say, better customer experience. So we have been, I think, learning a lot and already acting on it quite well.
You've launched a new product, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, or you're going to launch a product rather. I'm curious, was this feedback to any help in developing this new product?
Yeah, so we announced in July the new advanced hearable product called Companion by Audientes. And the Companion product is essentially based on the Ven software and hardware platform, but we're making some adjustments to it to be able to introduce it in consumer electronics markets in around the world. So the US and Europe are some of our initial markets of focus. So of course, you can say when we do improvements on the Ven platform, a lot of these are immediately available in the other setting, bar some issues and some functionality that are slightly different. But Companion is a product that doesn't necessarily do all the same things around self-fitting as the Ven does, but it's a more, you can say, easier to start to use product.
Well, We'll come back to Companion in just a moment, but first I want to return to Ven. The go-to-market is still ongoing. What projects and initiatives are still left to be done in India, and how can we expect it to impact your sales moving forward?
Yeah, so as I actually mentioned a bit earlier, we have around 350 points of sales today, and we are working on really bringing a lot of them more to become active points of sales that are basically handing products over the desk weekly and daily, and that's kind of really our key focus. So helping them to understand the offering and market and sell it, and that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. We have plans on growing the B2B channel, basically the wholesale channel, more by adding more points of sale to it. So our aim for the year is really to grow this to a significantly larger number, and of course working on bringing them kind of to be active points of sales as well. B2C, like online e-commerce, we launched actually also during July the Amazon brand store in India. So that is a channel that is kind of slowly ramping up for us as well. We do a lot of lead generation for our dealers through online, and that's definitely something that you can say is still work in progress, but is showing encouraging results as well.
I see. Moving then towards the companion product we talked a little bit about earlier, I thought you could compare it a little bit to Ven. What functions does it share and what functions doesn't it share?
Okay, so it shares the underlying hardware platform, and it shares a lot of the software functionality, but we have introduced some more simplicity in getting started using it. So for consumer channels, it doesn't have this sort of hearing test and the self-fitting in the same way. We have tried to make it much simpler and basically being able to market and sell it in those channels. It's something that will enlarge our market access. So we have done some I think smart tweaks to it, and of course all of this will be detailed as we get a bit closer to market with that.
The decision to launch Companion in the US is quite a curious one. Was there a reason behind why you launched this product in the US market rather than to launch your already existing product into the US market? How does the markets differ?
That's a good question. So the hearing aid market in the US is a regulated market where you need to go through basically an FDA registration or approval process. And in our roadmap, we have a plan to do that with basically an OTC hearing aid product, so over the counter, according to the new rules that has just been published in July, actually in the US. So Companion precedes that product. So basically it's something that allows us to enter markets like the US and in Europe and start getting experience with the market, but also making the relationships with different points of sale, dealers, distributors at an earlier stage.
Talk to us a little bit about the timeline regarding the FDA application process.
Yeah, so basically the FDA rules that has been published are coming into force in around October timeframe. So our aim is to enter the US market at some point during 2023 with an offering that is, you can say, building on the Ven concept, but is essentially an updated model for that market. The market has certain requirements for, you can say, limitations on amplification and so on. So we will be basically tailoring a product to fit that market.
Interesting. You mentioned Europe there as well, and I'm curious to know when and if you eventually launch a product there, is there a similar process involved?
Yes, again, if you are launching it into the hearing aid market, then there is also a regulated medical device approval process. And it is on our roadmap, but it's a bit further out. So again, Europe, we consider more from the initial consumer electronics introduction of a advanced hearable product that can basically act as what we call a situational hearing device. So helping in some situations, but not really in the sense of what a hearing aid does.
And would that process be handled by the EMA?
No, that's outside that. It's standard approvals in the European market for consumer electronics that applies.
Now I'm curious to know a little bit about the share. You also intending to move your listing from Nasdaq First North to Spotlight Stock Market, both in the Danish segment of those listings. Usually, it's the other way around. Usually a move from Spotlight to First North. What was behind the decision to move from First North to Spotlight?
Yeah, so today we are predominantly Danish held shares. So we have 2,700 shareholders, and I think over 99% are from Denmark. So we like to broaden the ownership to the Swedish market, which I think historically is more mature and a sort of really a market that understands and appreciates technology companies in the medtech space like what we are. So as part of that plan, we have been really with our advisors working on an approach where becoming listed at Spotlight should give us a higher liquidity, basically more trade in the share, not just from Danish investors, but also from Swedish and for that sake from Norwegian and other ones. So that really is what drives us. I think there are some benefits in the Spotlight community related to the cost of being listed there and the overall suite of offerings that are becoming available to us. So that's really is kind of the aim is to broaden access and ownership of our share and of benefit to our shareholders and ourselves, of course.
Interesting. And while we are on the subject of stock markets, you write in the report that you adjusted your expected funding of your go-to-market activities over the next 1 or 2 years. It used to be 50 million Danish crowns, but has now been adjusted to a figure that is accordingly. I couldn't find an actual figure in the report. Tell us, what do investors need to know?
Yeah, we haven't published the details of that yet, so you're absolutely right. But basically, last year, our share appreciated more than 100% at First North in Denmark and performed really well. We have to admit, this year the whole market situation has been sort of a bit of a change of things. So the plans we had when set earlier doesn't really necessarily, you can say, fit well into the current climate. So we have decided to adapt our go-to-market approach, our plans, and really make do with less, but do it in stages as we create value along the way. So that's why we're saying that our initial aim to raise 50 million will not be in one go this year. We will instead do it in some, you can say, some steps. So that's really what we mean by that. We are adapting to the real market situation and basically going to go out with an offer I think that is attractive, but we haven't published that yet.
And in the same section where one could read about this, one could also read about that you're adjusting expectations for revenue and EBITDA as well. This is something that is usually considered somewhat independent from the stock market itself. What drove these adjustments?
Yeah, well, I think that primarily that our plan was based on access to more kind of available capital that could be invested in the go-to-market. So basically marketing, advertising, and market entry and so on. So again, in this market situation, I think the right thing is to sort of take an approach that fit where the market is, and that's what we're doing. So we are kind of lowering our growth expectations in the short term, but really trying to build a platform for the long term. From what we are able to of course, raise of funding.
And we'll see how that develops. Steen,
Yes.
That was all my questions. There are no viewer questions, but I thank you very much for your time and wish both you and Audientes continued luck in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you.